In the still, stale air of a courtroom, two officers shared a laugh, their eyes fixed on the black man in a plain suit before them. He was just another face, another file, another easy win. But their smirks died the moment he reached into his coat and laid a single, unexpected item on the judge's bench. The joke was over. The man was not a defendant, he was the FBI director. And that quiet, calm man was about to dismantle an entire system with nothing but patience and purpose. In the stuffy Mississippi courtroom, the air was heavy with the predictable rhythm of small-town justice. Two uniformed officers, leaning casually against the back wall, found a source of private amusement in the man standing before the judge's bench. He was middle-aged, dressed in an unassuming gray suit, and his face held a calm quietness that they mistook for resignation. He had no lawyer, no protestations, and no story to tell. They exchanged a subtle chuckle, a silent understanding that this was a routine case, another simple name to be checked off a list. The judge, a man whose patience had long since worn thin, cleared his throat. The silent man, however, seemed to have his own agenda. Without a word, he reached deliberately into the inside pocket of his coat. The movement was slow, purposeful, and it held the attention of everyone in the room. The officer's smirks faded into curious frowns. What was he doing? Was this a mistake? As his hand emerged, it wasn't a document or an object of defense. It was a small, polished shield. He held it for a moment, the gold and silver catching the fluorescent light, before he placed it gently on the judge's bench. The courtroom went completely silent. The two officers, who had been on the verge of another sneer, now saw the federal insignia on the badge. An ice-cold realization dawned on them, spreading like a stain. This wasn't a local case. This wasn't just another defendant. The man looked up, his quiet gaze now holding an undeniable authority as he spoke a few simple words. I am the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The officer's laughter was now a forgotten echo, replaced by a profound and stomach-churning horror. Following the shocking revelation, the small Mississippi town found itself under a sudden and intense scrutiny. The FBI director's presence was a silent storm, far more menacing than any angry shouting. He didn't have to raise his voice. The sheer weight of his office was enough to command a different kind of attention. The courthouse, once a place of routine and casual authority, became a hub of federal inquiry. The director didn't issue threats, he simply requested information, but each request carried the force of an order. He asked for files on quietly closed cases, for the records of dismissed complaints, and for any footage that had been misplaced. At first, the local law enforcement responded with nervous smiles and hesitant compliance. They handed over what they thought was enough to satisfy him. But the director, with an almost preternatural calm, began to uncover the first threads of a much larger, darker tapestry. A file on a missing person marked "Runaway" contained notes that suggested a far more sinister truth. A report of excessive force, originally filed away as justified, was riddled with inconsistencies. The more he looked, the more the small cracks in the system began to widen. The very air in the town seemed to change, as if a long-held secret was being forced to the surface. Body camera footage that had been declared lost suddenly materialized. Eyewitness accounts that were never taken seriously were now meticulously recorded. The director's methodical approach was a quiet, relentless pressure, a testament to the fact that power, when wielded with patience and purpose, could expose the deepest buried truths and unravel a system that had long believed itself untouchable. The FBI investigation deepened, and the hushed corners of the small town began to stir with long-held secrets. The director's methodical approach gave voice to those who had been silenced for years. People who were once dismissed or intimidated by the local authorities now found the courage to speak. They came forward with a torrent of long-buried truths, each one a thread in the grim tapestry of abuse and corruption. A woman recounted how her son's disappearance was hastily written off as a runaway case, despite her pleas and her own findings. A man described being beaten during a traffic stop, only to have his complaint laughed out of the police station. Stories of racial bias, of justice denied, and of power abused were shared in hushed tones, then recorded in official statements. The director listened with unwavering attention, his presence a silent promise that their pain and their truth would no longer be ignored. With each new testimony, the picture grew clearer and more damning. The files that were initially provided by the local police were revealed to be deliberately incomplete, hiding a pattern of misconduct and negligence. The director's quiet persistence had unearthed more in a few days than the town had been willing to face in years. The air was thick with the weight of these revelations, a collective release of tension that had been building for generations. The people were no longer afraid, and the full extent of the systemic failures was finally seeing the light of day. The town's carefully constructed facade of order and peace was crumbling, one hard truth at a time. The mountain of evidence was now undeniable, a cold, hard summary of years of abuse and systemic failure. The FBI director, having meticulously pieced together the testimonies and documentation, called for a closed-door meeting with the town's key officials, including the two officers who had so carelessly laughed at him. There was no public spectacle, no grand display of power. Instead, the confrontation was a quiet, relentless laying out of the facts. He didn't shout or accuse, he simply presented the truth. He laid out the missing persons file, side by side with a newly discovered witness statement. He showed them the video footage that had been declared lost, revealing a brutal and unprovoked act of force. He spoke of the broken trust between law enforcement and the community, a chasm that had been growing for decades. The officials, who had once held a casual arrogance, now sat in stunned silence, their faces pale with the weight of their own complicity and negligence. The director's voice remained calm, almost dispassionate, which made his words all the more chilling. He wasn't there to humiliate them, he was there to show them the full, catastrophic consequences of their actions. He concluded not with a demand for punishment, but with a stark, undeniable truth: the system they had protected was rotten, and now the world knew it. He offered no easy way out, only the reality that they would be held accountable for every life they had dismissed, every complaint they had ignored, and every truth they had buried. The confrontation was not just about the past, it was a final, damning look at the broken system before it began to crumble. The aftermath of the FBI director's visit was a seismic shift for the small town. The quiet, calm man had left, but his presence lingered, a powerful echo of accountability. In the days that followed the closed-door meeting, resignations were filed, and formal investigations were launched. The two officers who had so glibly underestimated him were placed on administrative leave, their laughter now a distant, shameful memory. The once stagnant police department was forced to begin a painful but necessary process of internal review, and a new, interim leadership team was put in place. For the community, the change was more profound. The long-silenced complaints were finally given the serious attention they deserved. A formal board was established to hear grievances, and for the first time, people felt their stories were not only being heard but being acted upon. The missing persons case was reopened, and new evidence brought a glimmer of hope to a grieving family. The memory of the director's unshakable resolve became a powerful symbol. He had arrived as a nobody in a gray suit and left having dismantled a system with nothing more than facts and a quiet purpose. The story spread far and wide, serving as a stark reminder that true power isn't about the noise you make, but the integrity with which you stand. His visit didn't just change a single courtroom, it sent a message that still resonates today: underestimation is a fatal flaw, and justice, when pursued with patience, will always find a way to surface.